Did we mention that you also have to hold this opinion, or we don't care about your gender, your disability, or anything else like that? Pit bulls bite and clamp down, and they grind. They just keep grinding. They grind down to the bone and through the bone.
Oof.
No, they're not called land sharks for nothing. No other breed association tells you to carry a bite stick to insert inside the jaws in case your dog clamps onto another. Who does that? There's lots of questions they can't answer, and that's why they stopped having me on panels.
Welcome back to Awake at the Wheel. And now for the conclusion of our talk with Barbara Kay, where we dive into one of her most controversial topics yet, the surprising connection between pit bull advocacy and progressive ideology. We will unpack the data behind breed-specific attacks, explore the culture war around public safety, and discuss what this debate reveals about modern activism. It's a conversation that challenges assumptions and pulls no punches. Stay tuned.
And yeah, I'm sure it's different across school boards, and I will be careful about what I say here. And I know Oren's heard the full versions of many of my stories with my involvement in school boards, but I've been kicked out of a few committees because of being vocal, but that's what
so
has
you're doing the work. You're doing the work as the...
as they say, yes. I've tried to at least, but I don't know if I am the individual that they want doing the work is what I'm learning, because the more I find that there is an assumption because of the way that I look that I'm going to follow a certain narrative. But then when I open my mouth and share my opinions, I think there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance insofar as, because another thing that people don't see is that I'm blind. So I have a lot of, diverse aspects about me, and I have a lot of strong opinions about the way things are and the way things should be. And unfortunately, in my involvement with many of these different groups with the school boards and even an attempt to become a school board trustee, I'm just not the right fit. So it is really difficult, I find, to toe the line. And I think this is one of the challenges with politics and government and so on, is that and not to say that I'm the perfect person to get in, but when the right types of people do want to get in and make change, I don't know if the avenue is really there for that to happen.
Well, I mean, your own experience confirms what I've seen in other cases too. If you're all very diverse, you tick so many boxes, and what did you say your opinion was? Oh, that's all. Oh, sorry. That's, you're off the intersectional graph. You failed to make the grade because did we mention that you also have to hold this opinion, or we don't care about any... Yep. We don't care about your gender, your disability, or anything else like that. Yeah. And that's the hypocrisy. I mean, there's, you just crack the surface of this inclusion, diversity, blah, blah, blah. And it's so hollow. It's so shallow.
And it's so frustrating for those like me who want to make a real change. And exactly as you said, on the surface, I tick all the boxes that they want, but then when I don't agree with, it was critical race theory that I had an issue with. When I don't agree with that, that's, when things become problematic and I'm kicked out of the club.
Well, it's not surprising, but I salute you for being willing to be kicked out of the club. So, join another club. And
I started my own club here.
No,
right?
Start your own club. No, it sounds to me like you've got lessons to teach me. I don't think I have any lessons to teach you. You're wonderful, and I'm quite inspired by...
Thank you.
Hearing, in your own... You're obviously someone who's not... You don't wave like... You're sort of quietly going about doing the work, but good on you.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the work that you do, there's one topic, all of your topics that you write about are so fascinating, but one that really I hadn't heard before was about pit bulls and the tie between pit bulls and wokeness. So since I hadn't heard about it, I'm sure many of our listeners haven't either. So I'm going to just read a little bit about how this kind of falls into that category. And again, this opened my eyes, but makes a lot of sense. So some of the challenges that surround this topic are the fact that individuals feel that there's breed stigmatization and this parallels to human prejudice. There's also some challenges that people have surrounding the fact that anti-breed specific legislation is problematic. There's also discussion surrounding opposing the view that puts public safety first. I believe that the argument is that that's a very conservative view and is not in the best interest of pit bulls. And there's also some discussion surrounding class and race undercurrents and underpinnings of the pit bull argument. So again, I was very surprised to hear all of this, but I can definitely see and it makes sense. But can you talk a bit about your work surrounding this and some of the discussions
I'd be
that you've
happy
had?
to,
Yeah.
because it was one of the first topics that really caught my attention in a big way when I started out at the Post, which was in I was being published on a regular basis since 2001, but it was in 2003 that I became a weekly columnist. And at that time, I was I wanted to make sure I had enough topics. You know, there were so many topics, but I hadn't yet settled on certain niche topics. Anyways, I was looking around for interesting kinds of things, and I found an article by the editor of one of the editors at City Journal. He's now a senior editor, and it was about pit bulls, and there had been in Colorado there had been a savage attack by a pack of pit bulls on people, killed some people and all that. And he wrote a very cogent article on why pit bulls are a special breed and they need to be banned. And I thought, oh, that's a very, anyways, so I wrote a piece on all the stuff that the evidence that he brought to, and I wrote a column, and my editor put the title terrorists, canine terrorists. So naturally that got people's attention. And the in those days it was only email, it wasn't online, your feedback. I got emails like 100, 200. I've never, and I still to this day have never gotten anger and hatred like that in
Wow.
my life. And it was like, ooh, Mrs. Pitler, seriously.
Oh boy.
And I thought, okay, this tells me something. It tells me that there's a movement out there. This isn't just a few angry people. My pit bull wouldn't hurt a fly. My pit bull, they're the gentle. They're not only not a problem, but they're the most wonderful breed on earth, and you should be fired. So that was when I said, okay, I have to do some research on this. And I did, and I found some wonderful sources who were sane and who really knew their stuff about pit bulls. So I found out what was going on, and there really is a very well-funded, financed, highly well-financed pit bull advocacy movement that goes into action the minute that there's any negative stuff. Now, once I saw the epidemiology on pit bulls, pit bulls are a breed. Look, breeds, dogs and human companionship are 10,000 years old. But the dogs as a breed, they were mongrels up until just a few hundred years ago. And then people started breeding for what they wanted. You wanted a dog that would be an asset to sheep herding. So we got, you want fun to watch dogs race, greyhounds. All right, all this stuff. And pit bulls were bred to bait bears. And so because people liked watching dogs that would inflict pain and that would keep going no matter what. And that was public entertainment in those days. Pit bulls only used to be used. They were used to track down slaves and to tear them apart. They were used by the Ku Klux Klan. A lot of their income was from dogfighting. Up until the 90s, nobody ever thought of pit bulls as a breed that ordinary people would actually want because they understood this is a dangerous dog. Up until the 1990s, more than one death by dog bite a year in the United States, or there would be years where there'd be no deaths by dog bites. Maybe one, then two. As the pit bull movement got into gear and started pushing pit bulls as well, what happened was that a lot of blacks got into dogfighting. That's what happened in the 1970s. And that it can be a lucrative business. Anyways, it's illegal. It's illegal. It's illegal here. It's illegal in the United States. So you had blacks took over the dogfighting business. And as a result, people were really struggling with this. But pit bulls are a dangerous dog, but it's black people that depend on them for, and so you can imagine what goes on in the left brain. All right. Now they started pushing them and people started getting them because they were being promoted as they get a bad rap. Why do they get a bad rap? Because they're associated with black people who also get a bad rap. And, there's a conspiracy around them. But the police reports, there's so many police reports. The police are in on this conspiracy, just like they are in on the conspiracy to profile black people, even, it would take
what a long walk, my gosh. But no, I can definitely see how that's all connected.
So now it gets worse and worse because the pit bull population starts growing and growing and growing. A lot of the criminals, the drug lords, they know what they're getting. They get them because they like them, because they're fierce and But ordinary people who are suckers for a sad story and who read Malcolm Gladwell, who says it's a form of racism to distinguish between breeds of dogs. Excuse me.
They're dogs.
Yeah. No, it's worse than that. They're breeds. How do you get a breed from forced mating of a dog that has this propensity to a dog also that has that propensity, to make sure that the breeding is forced mating. Mongrels is dogs mate.
It's more natural. Yeah.
And you don't get an animal that is inherently vicious.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got people that are denying. Second of all, in order to have racism, the target of the racism has to be aware that there is such a thing as racism. Otherwise, they wouldn't care, right? So to call it racist, to say, no, I don't think I want the pit bull, I'll take the Labrador. Oh, but you're being a racist against the pit bull. Yeah, that pit bull looks really sad, like he's calling his congressman right now. The dog doesn't know he's being discriminated against. I'm telling you that so put together all the idiocies from the left, and there's this confluence. But don't you understand? Now we have approximately 70 Americans a year that are dying from dog bites. And who's responsible for 80 to 90% of them?
Bulls.
So the epidemiology is there. Let me just tell you two things that were really, I could never get out of my mind. One was the College of Physicians and Surgeons, I think it was Chicago, who are, they have no dog in this hunt, so to speak. And so they said, we have had to devise new forms of surgery for pit bull injuries. Why?
Wow.
Because their way of biting, most dogs, they bite and release. Pit bulls bite and clamp down, and then they go like this, and they grind. They just keep grinding. They grind down to the bone and through the bone.
Oof.
No, they're not called land sharks for nothing.
My goodness.
So they said, oh yeah, we've had to, when we have a pit bull injury, we've had to find new ways to deal with that surgery. Ordinary surgery doesn't deal with it. That was one thing that struck in my mind. The other thing was a report from Pittsburgh Pediatric Unit. This was some years ago. They did a study on dog bite related injuries to see which, again, to find out what are the worst injuries and how and why. The conclusion of their report, their study, was that any child, this was about children being brought in for dog bite related injuries, any child that has been in their hospital for more than 5 days, you're now down to, like at the beginning, if they're in for 1 day, yeah, it could be a pit bull, could be a German Shepherd, could be a this, could be that. Chow. Like there's all kinds of dogs that bite more than others. If the child has been there for more than 5 days or 6 days, it is 100% pit bull related. So that tells you how serious the injuries are. The amount of facial reconstructions I've seen, God forbid you should have to see the photos that I've seen of children who have had 12 to 16 facial reconstruction. Children are much more vulnerable because they're little and easy prey in their own families. I don't want to hit you with a million statistics because that's what,
But I love these statistics because I think it illustrates the point very clearly.
But that's it. These people are oblivious to epidemiology, and pit bull attacks have an acronym for them: SRUV: sudden, random, unprovoked, and violent. So you'll never know when people say, "But my dog, my pit bull, he's so perfect. He's so great. He wouldn't hurt a flea. I can leave him alone." And I say, yeah, they're all like that until they aren't.
Until they're not.
Until they're not. And you'll never know. You'll never know what sparked that sudden violence. I'll give you one last statistic. 95% of deaths of animals from dog attacks, like cats, other dogs, cows, and horses, 95% of them, well, all of the horse and cow ones, 95% of the others, pit bull related.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So I'm a big fan of epidemiology because it doesn't
lie.
It's neutral. It's not ideological. You can't finesse these numbers. So I kept writing about it, and the more people got angry at me, the more determined I was to get this information out, until I became kind of obsessive about it. And at the post, it was like, oh no, not another pit bull, But I did that for about 10, 12 years, and it didn't make any dent at all. It didn't make a dent. And I said, well, I can't keep writing about this stuff because if you're not going to see any change, if breed-specific legislation, Ontario passed it because of the epidemiology, but then they stopped enforcing it. Now in Canada, we just don't have that many pit bulls, so you don't see many pit bull related deaths. There was one very famous case. It was many years ago where who's the doctor in charge of deaths that are?
Oh my gosh, not the coroner. There's a name for that.
Yeah, that guy. And there had been a terrible death of a child, and the court had judged that it was the mother who had killed her.
Yes.
She had about 70 stab wounds all over her body. And the mother swore she was innocent. And then later, and the forensic doctor said it was scissor attack. Turned out to be a pit bull. The pit bull killed that child. But then you ask yourself, 70 wounds from one dog?
A child? Oh my gosh.
Okay. So that was a very famous attack. It's true that in Canada, there's very few deaths by pit bulls because we just don't have as many. Like in the States, there are millions of them. Millions. I think it's now, the Labrador was the most popular dog in the United States. And at one point, the pit bull was the second most popular dog. So, I mean, there was still far more Labradors than there were pit bulls, but still, the popularity grew, and they oblivious to, and they'll give you, it's the nanny dog. They have all these myths. Not true. It was never known as the nanny dog, and it was. So there are websites that are devoted to disproving these myths and that give you the facts. So I had my resources, and I was able to do it. Anyways, when people get me started, I tend to
But such a fascinating topic. Like I said, something I wasn't even aware of.
But the racism angle. And then I was reading PhDs of people who were comparing them to gays. Like, no, there was this one guy, and he's a big time writer, but I read his blurb on himself when he was getting his PhD. As a gay man, through my love of pit bulls, I have discovered the blah 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 blah, and he went on to become a gay defenders of pit bulls. And then
very niche.
And then there was a woman who interviewed Puerto Rican youth in the San Francisco area and their love of their pit bulls. She tied the whole thing together. These poor Puerto Rican guys, they have been, the police are down on them. Everybody's down on them. Everybody's down on their dogs. These poor pit bulls, these poor Puerto Ricans.
And I remember when it was 2004 or 2005 when I took my dear Rusty to dog training, and the women were so nice and everything, and they were great. And at the end of the session, they said, and make sure to vote against, or again, the pit bull ban and everything like that. And, back then the internet wasn't as common and we didn't have social media like this. So it was harder to find these resources. And I thought, yeah, they're just sweet, sweet women. And, and they've been training dogs for their entire lives. They know something. So I kind of deferred to their authority. But when I think about, them, and nothing against them, but they do seem, I'm assuming, very left. And, and again, when I read your article, I had never seen the woke or the left connection with the pit bull, story. So it just blew my mind. But I think it's a great metaphor. If people think, why do you care so much about pit bulls? Well, A, for all the reasons you mentioned, but B, it really does help show how people will just abandon all reason, logic, facts, and evidence if they have a narrative that they want to, adhere to.
That's right. I mean, and the public safety angle, people, like, they just somehow they shrug it off. If they would see some of the pictures I saw, they would be so horrified. But and then they have their mantras. All dogs bite. And whenever I'm on a panel or anything, and I'll say, I'm going to stop you right there. Yes, all dogs bite, but not all dogs maul, maim, dismember, and kill. And then they're like, and they'll never answer the question. I'll say, tell me something. How come when a breeder sells you a pit bull, they also give you a stick for putting inside the dog's jaws that you're supposed to carry with you when you're out for a walk? No other breed association tells you to carry a bite stick, like to insert inside the jaws in case your dog clamps onto another. Who does that? There's lots of questions they can't answer, and that's why they stopped having me on panels.
Yeah. So, and there's always, as you say, first of all, I've seen a few lovely pit bulls, but once again, they're lovely until they're not.
Sure, and they have wonderful qualities. Right. They do. They're loving. They're loyal. They're up for play. Like, they're very strong, and they love to play, and they're easy to train because they're intelligent. They don't understand their own genetics. They don't know why they suddenly snap and they go berserk. I mean, it's not their fault. Like, it's their genetics. So,
right.
So when they are good, which is maybe 99% of the time, yeah, they're wonderful dogs. But, you can't explain to people that they might be lucky and their dog will spend its entire life being wonderful and sweet and good. But you want those odds? I mean, a pit bull is 25,000 times more likely to maim a child than a Labrador. Those
25,000 times more?
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you really want those odds? I don't think so.
No.
All right. So, and again, we're running out of time, so I don't want to get too far into it. But just again, when I see the parallels about abandoning science or coming up with these but arguments, it's the same. I hate to say it, but when you look at, for example, the argument of biological men being allowed into women's sports or into women's change rooms and so on, well, yes, will most trans people not do anything to these women? For sure, the vast majority. But why are you increasing the risk even by a little bit when it's unnecessary, when there are alternatives? And that's the question. And again, people will just, because these such compassionate people, they don't think about the actual individuals.
There's compassion. Oh, yeah.
Compassionate people, right? And that's it, though. But they only focus on the ideology. They don't actually look at the people who are affected by it.
They'll never see the damage. They don't see the
exactly.
damage. I remember what. Sorry to interrupt you, but I remember there was a public park. I think it was maybe Saskatchewan. I don't know. One of the kids. It was a gravel or a concrete base, and one of the kids fell out of the jungle gym or whatever and broke his arm. Well, one child broke his arm, and so what happened? Everybody in all the playgrounds had to replace the concrete with cork. So that if a kid fell out of and of course, you know that half the equipment that we used to have in playgrounds isn't there anymore because God forbid a kid would fall out of, an apparatus anyways, even if they didn't hurt themselves because we're so protectionist now. But that's a public safety issue that is, people will go to any lengths, even if it's one child in 10,000, but they won't do the same but it's all ideology. It's all ideology. And that's why I put pit bulls in the same category as the trans, as you so aptly outlined. And it's a leftist ideology, but interestingly, it's not a political. It's a very bipartisan. Like people from the left love the pit bulls, but the people from the right do too. But at least the people from the right, they know why they love them. Oh yeah, he's a brute. Yeah, I want that. Yeah, I want that dog. No one's trespassing on my property. I got one, roaming the ground. So you got the don't tread on me rightists, love the pit bulls, but I have more respect for the rightists, than the people on the right.
Because they're acknowledging at least what they're capable of. Yeah.
And I'll just add one more thing when we talk about the damage that people don't see. Again, when you look at young girls as young as 13 having their breasts removed, or children having these other genital surgeries, and people say it's such a small number. But as you say, if it was something else that they believed in, only one, these edge cases, they will change all the policies, for that one person. Yet if there's thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people being affected, it's like, why do you care? And then they start turning things around and they start accusing you of being this, and that. So again, when I read that article and I just saw all the parallels, I thought, yeah, it doesn't matter what the topic is. It's just that, there's these underlying needs, these, I won't go into the whole psychology behind it because we've done it before, but that's what's at play here. And, people need to see that. So once again, that's why I thought that article was just so, I don't know, it blew my mind. I'd never made that connection. I got to say.
So happy. I'm so happy you read it. I'm so happy you liked it. And I'm so glad. No, I never get a chance to talk about this stuff. So I'm so grateful to have people that actually think it's okay to talk about it.
Absolutely. It's more than okay. It's welcomed here. And
it's
again,
necessary. It's welcomed and necessary.
Yes, absolutely. So there's so much more we could talk about with you, Barb, but like Oren said, we're running short on time. But I guess with all of the things that we've touched on today, we like to kind of wrap up the episode with giving our listeners kind of something tangible to take away as far as what they can do. So taking into consideration all the things we've talked about today, what do you think people can do with regard to either speaking up or activism in a healthy way? Or what advice do you have for our listeners?
I think, one message of hope, and I think a good thing is that we now have a lot more latitude. I don't know if you know, I mean, if you can think back even 3 years ago, people couldn't say on social media, men should not play in women's sports because they would actually be thrown off, Twitter or whatever. I think we have Elon Musk to thank for opening up Twitter at X to dissenting voices, even though we have a lot of horrible voices from the wrong side, what we consider the wrong side. At least we are allowed to say pretty well what we want. And I do believe in the value of constant flooding of social media with the right stuff and promoting, promoting podcasts in which we, do get to the bottom of all this bad stuff. But everybody's podcasts and everybody's Substacks. I think Substacks are the greatest thing since chopped liver. I mean, really, it's terrific that so many people who couldn't make any headway in mainstream journalism because their ideas were considered too toxic. They just said, you know what, start my own. And there's some awfully intelligent people out there and awfully good, very thoughtful. And by the way, it's not like that they're all dissenting. Some of them are just they're quite centrist, but they bring in both sides. I follow a lot of several Canadian Substacks that are terrific, and I keep encouraging people to read. There's great magazines that I read, Spiked from England and Unheard, and I'd be happy to send you some of my favorite picks if you like. But I think that you find your own people, if you start searching, and these people inspire you. I've found people on X that I follow that really do inspire me, and I spend far too much time on X, I know, but it's what keeps my sanity. It's what keeps me feeling I'm not alone.
Mm-hmm.
These incredibly intelligent people that are doing their damnness, and it gives me pleasure to support them and to reboot them. And I think we're having an effect. I do. I don't think we're going to have the effect we want for tomorrow's election. This is being where I know you don't usually mention the date when you do podcasts, but perhaps it's relevant that we are recording this the day before Canada's. We do not know what the outcome of that is going to be. So I'm a little bit nervous. But anyways, we are making some headway, and it's not as bad as it was. In terms of getting your voice out, it's not as bad as it was 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. The tide. Look, you can say what you will about Donald Trump, but he's had a salutary effect in boosting the spirits of people who say, isn't there anybody out there to help us? So it's good that we have, we take help and inspiration from where we can find it. And there's plenty out there.
Hey, well, so then on that positive note, until next time, keep your eyes on the road and your hands upon the wheel.